Hello, welcome to another episode of Agency Action with Toby and Kurt. I was going to say WP Action, but we are Agency Action. That's a whole nother podcast
That's
that I
only
don't
been a
know if
year. We don't need to know the name.
does it even exist. I don't know. Maybe someone will Google it and find out. Um, Kurt, good to see you as always. We had this idea that you kind of generated here to talk about how to build out projects. There's this idea of like a phased launch over time that you kind of build out. Uh, where you have like an MVP at the core. And then there's like this huge like waterfall maybe project, or maybe it's agile, but like a bigger thing. Let's talk about the pros and cons and how to pitch them and how, different people who might be open to these different approaches.
What we as an agency, we've tried some different pricing techniques, proposal techniques, and we fell on one that right now seems to be working really, really well for us. It's enabled us to upsell our packages, put more in, not put the customer really on a payment plan because all the work with Mañana No Mas is prepaid. We don't like extend like we don't invest in other people's businesses by extending them credit. Like we just don't do that. We used to. We don't anymore. So everything's prepaid. But when you build, like, let's say you bid a bigger project at, $50,000, 60, 80, whatever, it's kind of hard to say, hey, give me 80 grand today, and it's going to take me 6 months to get this done. There's a disconnect in that. And so the way that we've been able to do that is we've been able to say, hey, here's what we want to do for you. We want to break this into phases, right? And so we say phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four. Phase one's 15 grand. Phase two is 8 grand. Phase three is 20 grand or whatever. And so people know based on our project management software that hey, we're coming up, we're completing phase one. If you're ready for phase two, let's get that invoice out to you. You can reconcile that invoice and we can go right into phase two. But it also gives us like these cool milestones to like what we talked about last time, like get sign-offs from people on like phase one is done. I need your sign off on this so we can move to phase two. And it kind of keeps everything going. But I've also seen a working agency model where they say, yeah, it's $100,000 and you can pay as you go and we'll just send you an hours report every month, and I've seen that work almost like a retainer, right? Almost like a retainer for the agency, and we'll build your project as we go. And I was just like real curious from you, like for me on the bigger projects, phase one to me is launching an MVP. It's like, I want something with their brand and their color and a home page and a sales page on the internet for people to find and see. Like the sooner I can get them up with the ability or the hope of getting revenue through the project, the more stickiness I think it has in following that project through to completion. But I don't know if I'm just playing mind games with myself and the customer or if that's real.
No, I think like every project for me is an MVP. Like website is just a marketing tool, and SEO campaigns a marketing tool. Google Ads is, everything's about lead gen when it comes to this stuff. And if, as anybody who's ever done lead generation knows, if you think you're going to nail it on the first time, you're either super lucky or you're totally wrong. And maybe someone got lucky once, but most of us, we build something that we think is going to work, and then we iterate on it over months or years or even decades in our case. Like what we started with 10 years ago is different than 20 years ago, and here we are, 20 years later. And we're just today, for example, I had a conversation with my SEO guy, and we were talking about just changing the role from SEO to lead generation because he's seeing just big changes in the SEO landscape. He's like, SEO is one way to get leads, and he's seeing it as like the whole lead generation landscape is changing. And so I don't know, I think like, and I pitch this to my clients every time to varying degrees of understanding. Some of them get it, some of them don't. We're launching an SEO campaign soon with one of our clients who I don't think they understand that it's an iterative process, even SEO. Like we have a best guess, but our plan is to iterate over 6 months based on the results. And I say that because things that we're talking about right now, we haven't launched it yet. There are things that we're talking about that are slowing down the launch that have no impact on leads. We're talking about like, is this image centered properly in the footer? Like is the font size the right size? That sort of stuff. Is the spacing between sections the perfect thing? And in my opinion, I'm like, these are great questions, but let's launch and then let's talk about those, and maybe we can tighten it up. And because you're
Yeah.
not getting any leads right now from these things that are sitting on the shelf that we're going to launch.
Launch and tweak to me is like that's part of the magic of what we do, right? Launch and tweak and kind of look at things and see how it plays or get some feedback from people and go like the latest MVP that we launched as an agency, the customer doesn't even have a logo. It's just the title of their project on the website. And it literally there's the title of the project. That's it. No logo, no nothing. their corporate colors are what I chose for the sample website. And they said, man, that's pretty. I said, okay, well then these are your colors. And it's interesting because we pitched, a branding style guide as part of like the full agency experience, but their goal was to really just get something up as an MVP to let their stakeholders know that they were moving forward on the project. And I think what happened, and maybe I'm putting words in their mouth, but I think what happened is they went with another website provider they tried to source, and they've been working on their content and working on their stuff. It's an e-learning project. And so they have years worth of content they've been building and like their life dream, their life's work, their legacy, right? And then when it came time to put it on a site, they hired someone that failed. And then they got in touch with us, and the timeline had been greatly reduced to get an MVP up and let people see it. And it just worked out. I mean, it's not that we're the geniuses. You could say we're geniuses, but I don't think we're geniuses. I think we just do hard work. And we got it up, and the response and the result has been really incredible, which is nice.
Yeah, and there's another magical thing about this MVP idea or this like very phased approach. Like part of the premise is good is better than nothing. And the other thing is once the project is launched, whether it's a website or a campaign, the meaningless details become meaningless. People all of a sudden lose interest in a lot of the meaningless stuff. Like they don't. And so I think there's something really constructive about launching an imperfect thing because it helps you and the clients figure out what's important and what's not. Because all of a sudden, like all these things we're working on now, like if we were to launch today, we would never hear about them again because they're not important.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really big concept when if you break that out, like, because you think about, as an agency, if you're working on 10 projects at a time, 15 projects at a time, and you've got 8 of them bogged down with niggling details that are, inconsequential, that's a lot of wasted potential that you could have used to drive revenue or productivity somewhere else. I think about the one and done bigger projects. Like I think about the people that typically in the agency space, and correct me if I'm wrong, Toby, but I think people are still doing this. They're like, give me 50% down and then give me 50% when it's done. Like 50% up front and then the rest when it's done. And so they do this one and done kind of theory, right? They say, oh, it's a $50,000 project. Give me 25 grand up front and 25 grand whenever we get it done. And I think it sounds good. I think it sounds like you're working with the client, like, hey, we're invested like you. It's a 50-50 thing, but it's not a 50-50 thing. The customer's responsible for 100% of the cost, right? And I think when they do the one and done and it gets launched, I think that approach leads to disconnection. Like I feel like the agency's already set it up with the client through word speak and through culture that like we're going to get this giant project done and then we're done, right? Like as opposed to when you go take a phased approach. Newsflash: our last phase, like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Phase 4 is a recurring billing system that's like these are the things we're going to maintain for you until you fire us, right? Like so. Phase 4 goes on forever and ever. I'm always trying to build relationships and stickiness with the client, not a project that's done.
You inspired me a couple weeks ago. You had this idea of let's hypothetically we get a someone who's like, "Hey, build this thing for me," and you had pitched this idea to me about like, "Hey, why don't you do good, better, best?" And just like good is exactly what they're asking for. Better is like that plus something, and best is that plus plus, and the pricing escalates accordingly. I really like that as like a way to set up this MVP conversation because you can say like, "Oh, here's your MVP is exactly what you're asking for." But that's like only a portion of what we can do. Like, that's phase 1 or the MVP is here, but look at all this other stuff and now you have a roadmap for the future that they're inspired by. Even if they choose the base package, like at least they can see that.
Yeah, I was hesitating. I didn't know if I wanted to put this in the notes or not, but I say we just throw caution to the wind and we just chuck it out there and see what happens in the show. If you're building bigger projects, chances are you're using lots of tools, lots of plugins, lots of things. And there was some big news this week where people that might have used GiveWP or LearnDash or the event calendar, they went to that website and that website was gone. And then people on X freaked out and people just went nuts, right? Oh, it's shut down. Everything's shut down. And then slowly it started to come out that things weren't shut down. They were just kind of moved and everything redirected to Liquid Web, the website. But like all the blogs and all that support information is gone. And something really unique happened to me, Toby. I was doing a mastermind with the Lifter LMS crowd and the topic came up, but like 99% of the people on the call had no idea that anything had happened with Stellar. And you know how people in the WordPress space, they think the world revolves around WordPress. And then you get out into the real world, you get out into the wild and you realize nobody cares. It was like that. Like nobody on the call even knew that there was something that had happened. But it brought up a lot of questions for me, right? So we're agencies and we've represented those products to clients and put them into projects. So how do you address that? How do you approach that with your clients? Do you have a process?
Yeah, well, actually, this is a great transition because the process is that this is an iterative project. Like it started as iterative, and here it is. A challenge has been presented.
Here we
Like,
are.
let's talk about it and figure it out. So, like when stuff like this happens, and it happens with every industry, I imagine. Let's say you're in car parts, such and such part gets discontinued. What do you do? Uh, it's like I always see these things, and this is why, like, I think having a relationship with your team, like me as a someone who provides a service for you, like having that relationship and having like we can call it like monthly maintenance, but that relationship means something to me and hopefully it means something to them where they can reach out and be like, what's going on? I need help. Like, can we talk through this before we do something crazy? So that's how I look at it. It's all iterative and like it's all built on the relationship that we have with our clients and hopefully that they have with us. And the better that relationship, the better these conversations go. The more trust that we have in each other, the more we can be open and like, hey, I learned of this today, but we can be that frank with them and be like, yeah, let's figure this out. I don't have an answer, but maybe tomorrow I can get you more info.
Yeah, to me, this is where the real value of, having skin in the game and being in this for a little while, right? You and I have been around the block a few times. And so if I were to just take an example, right? Let's say I have a customer that has LearnDash as their product within their project, right? Some people would look at this and go, "Oh my God, what a nightmare!" Right? Like, I just want to get out of this, and so they go, "Okay, well, what else can I use? I can use, Tutor LMS, I can use Lifter LMS, I can use all these things." And so obviously I work with Lifter. So I go, okay, well, let's do the Lifter thing. So many people would think of this and go, oh my God, what a nightmare. I got to copy and paste all those lessons and all those quiz questions and all the assignments and I got to rebuild the certificates. But if you know the products, like if you've been around, so I can do a LearnDash to Lifter migration. There's a plugin that can help me do it, or I could use Claude and literally take an export and an import and move everything over. But at that point, it becomes okay, is that part of the relationship of using me as your agency where we prepay maybe a retainer or some maintenance fees? Or is that like a mini project that gets billed out at the agency rate because it's above and beyond maintenance? So when these things happen, plugin dies, right? Like let's say you're using some kind of calendar plugin and it dies. Is that an upsell opportunity or is that like a maintenance obligation for the agency?
Right. It probably depends on your agreement and your relationship. But if I were to like offer advice, I think like sometimes it's hard to set boundaries until stuff like this happens. And I always think like unknown events are another good time to set the right boundaries, whatever those are for you or your agency. And I think history has taught me that when something like this happens, it's probably going to be a bigger project and therefore will require a conversation and probably another scope. And I think part of like experience for me is that we're more comfortable today presenting this as a new scope and a new project than maybe we were 5 years ago.
It's interesting that you said 5 years ago. I'm trying to figure out if something changed in 2021 besides the pandemic that made us more brave, or if you and I have just, our life cycle in the industry has kind of paced itself in that way. Because, I hang out on post status a little bit and I see a lot of other agency owners that would be like, oh my God, what are we going to do? I don't have the kind of time to update these 10 websites. And it's like, why are you upset? You can charge these people.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm confused, man. You should be selling this. This is $900 a change. I'm curious. Do you think there was like a fundamental change like 2021, 2022, where agencies got a little more businessy in how they approach customers, or do you think you and I have just have that much skin in the game that we figured it out over time?
That's a really neat question. I like to think because like any human, I like to take the credit for myself and like that I figured it out. But I do wonder now that you're saying it, did a bunch of people figure it out at that exact moment? Was it like the time in history? Like let's say let's say Mark Zuckerberg never was born. His mom went on a date with some other person that night or whatever. He was never conceived. Somebody else, the time was right for something like Facebook. We already had MySpace. This happens
Yeah.
over and over. Google wasn't the first. They weren't. they just kind of emerged from that plethora of search engines. And now there's AI, there's 10 AI things. And at some point, there's going to be one or two. Same with Amazon, like maybe the time was right and all the circumstances were converging that like agencies kind of figured this out at the same time. So I'm open to that. I also think like it was in hindsight, it was stupid to not figure it out earlier. One of
Yeah.
many, like, looking back.
I can remember when I was first launching my agency, and by the way, not charging near enough for the projects I was building. There was like a weird sense of responsibility and ownership to the project. Like I built it, so I got to make sure it stays good forever. And whether people paid me maintenance or not, like people would call me up and go, "My form's not working anymore. I need you to fix that. I paid you for that." And it's like, and there's something weird that happens, right? Like the lower the income, the lower the revenue from the project, the crappier the clients seem to be, right? So I paid you for that. You got to make it right. It's like you paid me $500 to build you an e-commerce website. Like you should be thankful you made any money off the website. But that's not back then. That wasn't the mentality. Back then it was like, oh my God, I can't have this person say something negative about me, right? It's in this small little community I've been selling these sites in. And so you would get like bullied into like fixing these things
Yeah.
as if like you invented the software, right?
Right.
And then reality hits and like you go into the website because they're not paying you for maintenance. So you go in and there's, 27 updates and, they're running old PHP and so you end up having to update the whole stinking thing. And then magically everything starts to work again. And then you hit them back with, hey, I fixed it as a goodwill visit this time, but please know that, you have the option to buy, maintenance from us. And then they never buy the maintenance. And 2 years later, they hit you with another mad
Yeah.
email. Somewhere along the line, I was able to distance myself from that whole nightmare. Like I don't own it's the website's yours. I built it for you, but the website's yours. You own it. The software's not mine. We license it from a provider, right? And so everything's got licensing, everything's got support. If you don't want to keep us on retainer or pay us support, here's all the websites and emails that you can go let your fingers do the walking and DIY this thing. Or if you want to leverage me as an expert, you can come on back and we can talk about how much this will cost for you to have us handle this for you.
Yeah. You know what? Something that's really prescient for us right now that we're going to move forward with. I just don't know the exact specifics. So we've been offering, let's call it website maintenance, WordPress maintenance generically for X amount of dollars. And maybe it's everybody gets a different price basically based on their site. But we've never defined what it is from a developer perspective and a testing and QA perspective until just recently we started to define it. Once we started to define it and I started with me having a conversation with the developer where I just kind of overheard in passing, like, this took 4 hours to update this site. I was like, tell me what you did. And I was like, okay, I see why it took 4 hours. And in my head, I'm like, I would have just done 15 minutes worth of testing. It would have been a much smaller. And so as I did that, I was like, but there are sites that are going to require 4 hours or more every month to maintain. I'm thinking of WooCommerce sites with 30 plugins, and we're going to have a
Yeah.
staging site with credit cards connected, and we need to test credit card, like complex scenarios that potentially require way more money than we're currently charging them for that. And then there are sites that probably could get by on a very basic plan. And so part of this, like what I heard you say that I really resonated with is like, it's okay to reset the expectation with your clients whenever it makes sense and is logical. And so part of the question that I like to ask is like these days is like I consider the relationship. They have a request. Hey, can you just swap this image out? And obviously it's like 15 minutes for somebody to do. And I say in my head, I'm thinking like at a base level, they need to pay for this. But is it a one-time fix or am I creating a precedent? And how would this, if I did it for free or paid, how would that impact the relationship? Part of it is like sometimes when you set, and this is the 2020 learning maybe, like sometimes when you set that payment precedent, it actually improves your standing with the client
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
makes them appreciate you more and consider you more of an expert. So I really, older I get, and I don't know if it's age or that 2020 thing, but I think there's real value in charging, like for everyone, like sets the right tone, the right message. It closes a lot of communication holes that might have existed.
Yeah, I was subcontracting for somebody that was selling he was calling them like maintenance. It was like maintenance, but he was selling it like you could buy 3 hours, you could buy 5 hours, you could buy 7 hours, and what was happening is customers were like scheduling a Zoom call to tell me their project, right? Thinking that So they either thought the Zoom call was free and they could just talk to me and get free advice for 3 hours, right? And then I would still have 5 hours left to do the whatever they asked for. Or people would be like, the clock's running, right? And it's like a race. Like, how fast can you go, Kurt? How much can you get done in 3 hours? And I'm like, hold on. You are trying to leverage my 25 years of expertise. And obviously, you're the customer. You're trying to get the best bang for your dollars. But I am not running a sprint race for you on your project and killing myself, for what it, in my little world turns out to be a couple $100. Like let's just be, because it's a subcontracting thing, right? I'm not charging my retail agency rate to do this stuff. And so I really didn't like the whole idea of the hour selling thing, because in the real world, as an agency owner, you and I have the conversation with the client. We get the scope of the work. Could you knock it out in 2 hours? Could I knock it out in 2 hours? Yeah, maybe. If I give it to someone else on my team, is it going to take 3 hours, 5 hours? So it's really hard to go by the hours thing. I try to keep in mind, how much time would I spend on this and what is that equal to in an agency rate? And then I try and pitch the job based on the value it provides. And in some cases, the value is like a 10x value, where you go, well, if I do this for you, you're going to make an extra $80,000 this year. So it's not going to be $1,500. It's going to be $12,000, right? And we have a huge margin on it. But again, that's value-based pricing, not hourly pricing. And I really struggle with that hourly thing in the world, because let's just face facts. I can frame up an e-learning website in minutes, and it's going to take someone else that's new to the space 3 weeks to do it. And it's like, there's a reality that happens with experience, and a mechanic gets paid 2 hours to put brakes on the front of your car. He can do the job in 18 minutes. Should he be paid 18 minutes or paid 2 hours? Is he penalized because he got better at it?
Yeah, and I think over the years we've moved mostly to fixed bids for this reason, that me and my team are experts, and hourly, if we're going to sell hours, we got to think about it in a way that makes sense. And so I know there's an agency in town with very senior developers that charges hourly, and I think maybe the hourly thing makes, you just need the right client, the right business, everything needs to align for that. And same with the other way, by the way. I do one way that we pitch hourly, we do very little like hourly pitching. But here's an example. Just this week, someone called a very small business. Actually, it's a local developer, and they're like, "Hey, here's this bug on this WooCommerce thing." And they found a website. Maybe they Googled AI, and like like, here's a solution, but I have no idea what to do with this solution. And I told them, like, I see the solution. I'm gonna spend 1 hour implementing that solution. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm only going to bill you for 1 hour, and then we'll see where we're at. And I was like, in that scenario, I was comfortable with that, framing it in that way. We
Yeah.
also sell with our maintenance, a lot of times we'll sell like 1 hour of miscellaneous help. But hey, you need an image swap, you need text. But I like that because it doesn't communicate what it is. Nobody knows what an hour's worth, but at least it frames it up in a way like, we're going to do some small things if you need them. It's only 1 hour. And if you need more than that, it'll be a conversation. And we kind of control, does it need a conversation or not? So I think, like, while the 1 hour thing doesn't make sense, even in that context, it does set some sort of a framework for a conversation.
Yeah, I kind of view it almost like to me, a 1 hour thing is almost like a paid discovery needs assessment. You know,
Hmm.
it's like, you're going to pay me to do something for you, but it's going to result in a conversation where I try to charge you more.
Hmm.
Like, I'm just getting the information I need to know what's really going on.
Yeah. I was on a call yesterday with somebody. They were taking way too, so their site's down because they can't figure out their hosting situation. And they were going with a super cheap host. And I was like, look, just pay us way more than they're charging and we'll solve it today, pretty much. They're still on the fence about that. Their site's still down. But the relevant point here is that on the call, they pulled up the cheap sites packages and they're like, oh, how does your package compare to this? How's your package compare to this? And this is part
Yeah,
of,
it doesn't.
like, this is part of respecting my time and my experience. I was like, I literally told him, I go, I have no idea. Like, all I know is I'm guessing if you tried to get them on this phone call, they would not join this call.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of validation in that. And it's hard because, like, when you're like, "Yeah, you pay us more and we can fix it today," it almost sounds like you're holding their website hostage, like, for the payout, but it's not even your gig yet, you know? And if they're crying poor and broke and no budget coming in the door, you probably don't want them anyway.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting too? In this case, so they wanted that, what they were going to pay was, let's say, $100 a year for hosting from a cheap provider. And I pitched, let's say, 3x that roughly just for hosting and on the call. And they're like, okay. And I was like, you know what? You're also going to need someone to update this thing. And so ultimately, they came out of the call, and you're going to need to secure it and all this. What I ended up pitching was X, what they were going to pay that hosting company,
Yeah.
and I still think I might win the business.
You might. You absolutely might because there's value in that. So we recently interviewed an SEO person on another show. And these are the things like because you hear from other verticals all the time, right? And the guy's like, I launched this 2 years ago. Now we have a waiting list of people that we can serve with SEO services, and it's a minimum 20, I think it's $2,000 a month or $2,200 a month or something like that, right? And so it's like establish himself as an expert. There's a waiting list for his services, $2,200 a month, right? It's we're not fighting for people that have $150 a month to spend or $250 a month to spend. You have to come ready to go with your business if you're going to get the support from an expert. There's a certain cost of entry to working with experts. It's I think I've said this on the show before, but I've helped other larger agencies, and that's really opened my eyes because they'll ask me for support on something like a technical call or something. And then after the call, I find out that like I'm getting a few bucks, but they charge somebody 10 grand for that call, or they charge somebody, $6,000 for that consultation. And it's like, wow, I got to start charging. I got to start raising my
Yeah.
charges.
Yeah. If you talk to or price out projects with the bigger agencies and even in the WordPress space, I was on a call with Behemoth in the WordPress space. They're a company everybody who listens to this has probably heard of. And what the one question they asked me, they're like, they were trying to get pricing out of me and I didn't have enough info to deliver it. And they're like, do you charge what this big company charges? I'm like, no, for sure we don't charge what they charge. And like the thing is, if you found out what they charge, I know for a fact it'd be at least I mean, probably 10x sometimes, at least 5 to 10x for the same exact work, same exact project, same exact deliverable. 5 to 10x. So think of what you're charging, multiply it by 5, multiply it by 10. It could be your competition.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting. But and I'm looking at our time. Let's just touch on it. Maybe we expand on this on the next show. When we talk to large agencies, now your agency is bigger than my agency, right? But let's just say like you and I are in the same group and we talk to larger agencies. I think it's foolish for us to think that they bootstrap that whole thing and just like maxed out their MasterCard. Next thing you know, they've got 100 people in cubicles working for them. I think it's safe to say that there was some kind of investment money or loans or some kind of influx of revenue. Somehow it didn't just, you didn't make a few phone calls, get a couple of customers and then have a 3-story building full of workers, right?
Right, exactly.
So at what point do you think, Toby, that you would consider an external influx of cash to help you with your growth or your expansion?
Yeah, this is tricky because we've all gotten about 1,000 of these spam emails this last month
It's been
asking,
crazy lately. Yeah, I'm
here's
getting a
my
ton
free
of people
money.
trying to give me money.
um,
What in the world am I going to do with $500,000?
Here's the thing, like, I barely know what to do. And we're not making a lot of money. It's like, I don't know if I'm spending my current money correctly. The last thing I need is more of it that I have to pay back that I still don't know how to spend properly. So I think for me, like, I'm not interested in more money in that sense. Like, I would love to make more profit and, sack that away in my kids' college fund, but I have no idea what I would do with any amount of cash that somebody gave me beyond what I'm already doing with it. And I don't this is what a question for you, Kurt, maybe, like, I suspect that a lot of people wouldn't know what to do with it, but some people do know what to do with it. And, like, do you know what to do with it if you got it?
I have some very distinct ideas. Like, so I have some training products and other verticals, right? And so the potential for revenue on those is very strong, but I haven't put enough work into recruiting clients for those products. So if I took a loan, maybe I would do lead generation for one of those products. Maybe I would hire a salesperson and front load 2 months of salary for that person, knowing that it takes 60 days to roll up revenue on the project. And if they failed, then I guess I'd let them go and then I count it up as a loss and a lesson learned, right? But it's some people would say, well, you should do some pay-per-click advertising. Okay, well, is that how these big agencies became big agencies? Did they do pay-per-click advertising? Was that the magic sauce? It's interesting to me to figure out, like, I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish just bootstrapping this thing. I've leveraged a Visa and a MasterCard and American Express on occasion, but for the most part, this thing's completely built out of, grit and sweat. And it's kind of cool to be able to say, "Oh, I live in this house and paid for it with that." Like that's fun. That's pat on the back. But to go to the next level, would it make sense to take in money and go, you know what? I could pay a couple of apprentices. I could rent an office with 2 or 3 permanent cubicles. I could do like there's all these things you think about.
Here's what I
Would it
wonder,
be
like,
worth it?
even before you get to would it be worth it, like, what you need, any CEO needs or founder, like, I think, let's say I could get $1,000,000 in loans. I can't, but let's say I could. The first thing I would need to do is free up my time.
Yes.
Whether that's closing down my business and now I have $1,000,000 to work with for the next year, that's probably the
Flee the
best thing to
country?
do. But if you're saying, like, at the Mighty Mo, my current business, how do I free up my time? I have no idea because that's what I've been working on for 20 years. I still haven't figured it out. Like, even with $1,000,000, I wouldn't know what to do. It's not as simple as hiring someone. Like, it's very
No, because you gotta
muddy
train
and
them and
complex.
onboard them, and it's a difficult question, and and I think it's one that's worth putting out, and maybe this becomes an extended discussion at some other time, but it's, if you had a sudden influx of money, or if someone was said, "Hey, I wanna invest in you." I had a company reach out to me through LinkedIn that said, "Our business invests in smaller agencies like yours. Would you be interested in a partial acquisition?" Or something like that. And you go, "Well, that's kinda flattering." And then on the other hand, you're like, "No, because if I sold you my business, what would I have left?
Right.
This is what I do.
Yeah.
And what am I gonna do? Go get a job at Home Depot stocking paint?" Like, so just trying to think about what would be the potential for growth. And I think this is important. I think this might hit home with both of us from different perspectives. Just because, let's say I added 2 staff members locally and we rented an office and there's 3 cubicles and we're all staring at each other all day, and we got a conference room, we do some client meetings, and we feel like an agency, right? So this is what I'm saying. We go from me here with my pictures of Italy to I'm in an office and I feel like an agency. Did I help my family's financial situation? By the time I pay for a building, bring in 2 people full time, pay their salaries, am I selling enough work at a high enough margin that after costs, the net profit extends beyond what I'm making currently? Because I've given myself a ton more headaches.
Yeah.
So for all those headaches, did I make any more money personally?
Well, and you still have to pay off the loan.
Well, yeah, and you still got the loan.
Like, you're not at free, even if you're making profit, that's going to them for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge. And in fact, like, this is the whole my current questions with growth, because we've been growing for really 2 years and growing significantly. My profit is less this year than last year. My bottom line income is way higher. And so, like, and my time invested in the business is way higher. So I'm like, is it worth it? This is the question. Like, what is the
Yeah. So
goal
so is it worth rolling back personally to roll forward professionally?
and to what end? Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
goal is not to I don't have a goal of selling the business. My goal is just to make it stronger, more sustainable, and I'm hoping and praying that growth leads me there, but I don't know that it will.
Well, maybe you could just redirect the Mighty Mo to the liquid web and they can absorb you.
On that note, that's perfect. Kurt, thank you so much for this great conversation. How can people get in touch with you?
Personally, hook up on LinkedIn. I'm the only Kurt Von on there, easy to find. And then for business, I am at Manana No Mas.
Thanks. And I'm Toby Crines. You can find me on LinkedIn, TobyCryns, and at the Mighty Mo. That's my agency. We do WordPress and SEO. Pretty much it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.